New England, 1878. The train whistled sharply as it pulled into Oakridge Station, its iron wheels screeching against the rails like a wounded animal. Inside, gripping her worn carpet bag with white knuckles, sat a woman who hadn't trusted a man's word in nearly 2 years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma Thorne stared out the window at the unfamiliar landscape, her dark auburn hair pulled back in a simple knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a practical gray traveling dress that had seen better days, the hem frayed slightly from weeks of travel. Her amber eyes, once described as warm as honey by an admirer, now held a wariness that aged her beyond her 24 years. The station looked smaller than she had imagined, just a wooden platform with a modest building beside it, surrounded by a scattering of shops and homes. Oakridge Station, final stop. The conductor called, moving through the car and rousing sleeping passengers. Emma didn't move, even as others gathered their belongings and filed toward the exits. Her hands remained locked around her bag, her jaw set in a tense line. Inside the bag lay everything she owned in this world: 2 dresses, a nightgown, a few personal items, and a letter that had brought her to this remote corner of New England. The letter was from Thomas Blackwood, a widower seeking a wife to help care for his young daughter. Emma had responded from Boston, where she had been working as a seamstress since fleeing Philadelphia. She had told him she was hardworking, respectable, and good with children. She had not told him how difficult it was for her to trust, or why. "Miss, we've arrived at Oakridge. Are you getting off here?" The conductor stood in the aisle, his bushy eyebrows raised in question. Emma nodded once, a short jerky movement, and rose to her feet. She gathered her bag and followed the last passengers off the train, stepping onto the wooden platform with reluctance. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. The station was busy with people greeting arriving passengers, collecting mail, and loading cargo. Emma stood alone, clutching her bag and scanning the crowd. Thomas Blackwood had promised to meet her, but she had learned the hard way that men's promises were easily broken. Her eyes darted from face to face, evaluating each person with instinctive distrust. "Miss Thorne?" Emma turned to see a young man approaching. He wasn't what she had expected. Thomas Blackwood had described himself as 35 with graying hair. This man couldn't be more than 30, with dark hair and broad shoulders. He wore a simple but clean shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His hands, she noticed, were large and calloused, working hands. "I'm Daniel Reed," he said, touching his cap politely. "Thomas Blackwood asked me to meet you. He's down with a fever and couldn't make the trip himself." Emma felt her stomach tighten. Already the arrangement was changing. Already a man's word was proving unreliable. She took an instinctive step back, her knuckles whitening around the handle of her bag. Daniel noticed her reaction and kept his distance, maintaining a respectful space between them. "Mr. Blackwood sends his apologies. He was looking forward to meeting you, but took ill 2 days ago. The doctor says he'll recover, but he needs rest." Emma nodded once, sharply, but said nothing. She had grown cautious with her words over the past 2 years, measuring each one carefully before releasing it into the world. "I have a wagon waiting," Daniel continued, gesturing toward the street where a sturdy wagon with a chestnut mare stood hitched. "It's about an hour's ride to the Blackwood farm. If you're ready?" Emma hesitated, weighing her options. She could refuse to go with this stranger, but what then? She had spent nearly all her money on the train fare. She had no connections in Oakridge, nowhere to stay, no means of support. Reluctantly, she nodded again and followed Daniel to the wagon. He offered his hand to help her up, but Emma ignored it, climbing onto the seat unassisted. If Daniel was offended, he didn't show it. He simply loaded her bag into the back and took his place beside her, leaving as much space between them as the seat allowed. As they pulled away from the station, Emma studied her companion from the corner of her eye. Daniel Reed had a strong profile, with a straight nose and a firm jaw shadowed with stubble. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-green, like the sea before a storm. He handled the horse with confident ease, his large hands gentle on the reins. "You've come a long way," Daniel said after they had left the town behind. "Boston, right?" Emma nodded, keeping her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I've never been to Boston myself," Daniel continued, seemingly unbothered by her silence. "Spent most of my life right here in Oakridge. I'm the blacksmith. My shop's just off the town square. The blacksmith." That explained the powerful arms, the calloused hands. Emma had always found smithies slightly intimidating, the heat, the noise, the sheer physical strength required. She shifted slightly, putting another inch between them. "Thomas has been a good friend to me," Daniel said. "When my parents died of the fever 5 years back, he helped me get established. Let me use his old forge until I could afford my own." He glanced at her. "His daughter Lily is a sweet child, 7 years old and bright as a new penny. She's been excited about your arrival, been cleaning her room and helping Mrs. Parker tidy the house all week. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." Emma felt a twinge of guilt at the mention of the child. Whatever her misgivings about this arrangement, about men in general, the little girl was innocent. She deserved kindness. The road wound through dense woods, the trees aflame with autumn colors, rich golds, fiery oranges, deep reds. In other circumstances, Emma might have found the scene beautiful, but today she saw only isolation. The farther they traveled from town, the more vulnerable she felt. "You don't talk much, do you?" Daniel observed after another stretch of silence. Emma gave him a sharp look, prepared for the usual male response to her reticence: irritation, demands for conversation, accusations of rudeness. Instead, she found Daniel watching her with simple curiosity, no judgment in his expression. "That's all right," he said, turning his attention back to the road. "Words aren't always necessary. My father was a man of few words himself. Used to say, 'Still waters run deep.'" They traveled in silence after that, the only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels, the steady clop of the horses' hooves, and the rustle of wind through the trees. Despite herself, Emma began to relax slightly. Daniel Reed seemed content with quiet, making no demands on her. After about an hour, they crested a hill, and the Blackwood farm came into view below them. It was larger than Emma had expected, a 2-story white farmhouse with a wide porch, a red barn, and several outbuildings. Fields stretched out on either side, some planted with what looked like winter wheat, others lying fallow. Smoke rose from the chimney, and chickens pecked in the yard. "There it is," Daniel said. "Not the biggest farm in the county, but good land. Thomas works hard." As they approached, the front door of the house opened, and a small figure darted out onto the porch. Even from a distance, Emma could see it was a child, a girl with dark braids flying behind her as she ran down the steps. "That'll be Lily," Daniel said, smiling. "I told you she was excited." The wagon pulled into the yard, and Daniel brought the horse to a stop. Before he could climb down, Lily was beside them, her face flushed with excitement. "Are you Miss Thorne? Are you going to be my new mother? I've been waiting all day. Mrs. Parker made apple pie for supper, and I helped pick the apples myself." The words tumbled out in a rush, and Emma felt overwhelmed by the child's enthusiasm. Lily had her father's dark hair but bright blue eyes that sparkled with life. She wore a simple blue dress with a white pinafore, and one of her braids was coming undone. Daniel laughed. Give Miss Thorne a chance to catch her breath, Lily. She's had a long journey. Sorry, Lily said, though she didn't look particularly repentant. I'm just so happy you're here. Papa's sick, but he's going to be very glad to see you when he feels better. Emma managed a small smile for the child, the first she had offered since arriving in Oakridge. She climbed down from the wagon without assistance and smoothed her travel-wrinkled dress. Come inside. Lily grabbed Emma's hand, tugging her toward the house. I'll show you everything. Emma allowed herself to be led, glancing back once, to see Daniel unloading her bag from the wagon. He caught her eye and offered a reassuring nod, as if to say, "You'll be all right." The inside of the farmhouse was clean and well-maintained, if somewhat sparse in its furnishings. The main room held a stone fireplace, a dining table with 6 chairs, and a few comfortable-looking armchairs. The floors were wooden, polished, with years of use, and braided rugs added touches of color. "Mrs. Parker," Lily called. "Miss Thorne is here." A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from what Emma assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, well," she said, smiling warmly. "Welcome to Oakridge, Miss Thorne. I'm Martha Parker. I've been helping out since Thomas's wife passed, looking after the house and this wild little thing." She ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. The air here was cleaner, the night deeper, the silence more complete. She thought of the day's events, of Lily's enthusiastic welcome, Thomas's quiet courtesy, Mrs. Parker's motherly efficiency, and Daniel Reed, with his storm-colored eyes and hands that could bend iron, but had treated her with such gentle respect. Emma turned on her side, pulling the quilt tighter around her shoulders. She had come to Oakridge out of desperation, not hope. She had agreed to marry Thomas Blackwood because she needed security, not because she believed in love or trust or happy endings. Those illusions had been shattered in Philadelphia 2 years ago. Yet something about this place, these people, made her wonder if perhaps she had been too quick to judge all men by Edward Hargrove's actions. Perhaps there were still good men in the world, men who kept their promises, who treated women with respect, who could be trusted with fragile things like hearts and futures. It was a dangerous thought, and Emma pushed it away firmly. One day in Oakridge wasn't enough to undo the hard lessons she had learned. Better to remain cautious, to keep her distance, to protect herself from further hurt. With that resolution firmly in mind, Emma finally drifted into sleep, unaware that her carefully constructed walls had already begun to crumble, brick by careful brick. The first week at the Blackwood farm passed in a blur of new routines and adjustments. Thomas remained bedridden for the first 3 days, his fever slow to break. Emma found herself stepping into the role of household manager sooner than expected, working alongside Mrs. Parker to keep the home running smoothly. To her surprise, Emma discovered she had a talent for domestic management. Years of making do with little had taught her efficiency and resourcefulness. She organized the pantry, mended linens that had been set aside for Sunday, and created a system for Lily's school things that reduced the morning scramble. Mrs. Parker watched her with approving eyes. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," she said on the 4th day, as Emma reworked the household accounts to stretch the monthly budget. "Thomas needs someone practical, not just a pretty face." Emma looked up sharply. "Is that what his first wife was, a pretty face?" Mrs. Parker's expression softened. Rebecca was lovely, inside and out, but she wasn't raised for farm life. Everything was a struggle for her, the isolation, the endless work, the harsh winters. She tried, bless her, but it wore her down. The consumption just finished what hardship had started. Emma felt a pang of sympathy for the woman she was essentially replacing. And Lily? How has she managed without her mother? "Children are resilient," Mrs. Parker said. "And she's had Thomas, who adores her, and me when I can be here, and Daniel, who treats her like the niece he never had. But she needs a mother, a constant presence. She needs you, Miss Thorne, whether you believe that yet or not." The idea that she could be necessary to someone, especially a child as bright and loving as Lily, was both terrifying and oddly warming. Emma had been alone for so long, responsible only for herself, that the thought of being truly needed was almost foreign. On the 5th day, Thomas finally came downstairs for meals, though he tired easily and retired early. Emma found him to be much as his letters had suggested, thoughtful, intelligent, kind but reserved. He watched her interactions with Lily with obvious approval, but made no move to rush their own relationship, true to his word that she would have time to adjust. It was Daniel Reed who proved the most unsettling element of Emma's new life. The blacksmith visited the farm regularly, sometimes bringing supplies from town, other times simply stopping by on his way home from his shop. Each time, he treated Emma with the same quiet respect, never pushing for conversation but including her naturally in discussions. Despite her determination to keep her distance, Emma found herself watching Daniel when he didn't notice. The way his strong hands could be surprisingly delicate when helping Lily with a drawing or repairing Mrs. Parker's broken spectacles. The way his serious expression transformed when he smiled, lines crinkling around his eyes. The way he listened, truly listened, when others spoke. On Saturday morning, a week after her arrival, Emma was hanging laundry in the yard when the now familiar sound of Daniel's wagon approached. Lily, who had been helping by handing Emma clothespins, dropped her basket and ran to meet him. "Daniel! Daniel, did you bring it?" "Did you?" Daniel laughed, lifting the excited child onto the wagon seat beside him. "What do you think is under that cloth, Sprite?" Emma continued hanging sheets, pretending not to notice their arrival, but her ears strained to catch their conversation. "Miss Thorne," Lily called, "look what Daniel made for me." Reluctantly, Emma turned. Daniel was helping Lily down from the wagon, and the child was carefully carrying something covered with a piece of sacking. When they reached Emma, Lily proudly pulled away the covering to reveal a small wooden chest, beautifully crafted with her name carved into the lid. "It's for my special things," Lily explained. "Daniel made it all himself. Look at the flowers he carved. Aren't they pretty?" Emma examined the chest, genuinely impressed by the craftsmanship. The wood was polished to a warm glow and delicate. Wild roses had been carved around Lily's name. The hinges were obviously hand-forged, their design echoing the floral motif. "It's beautiful," she said honestly, looking up to find Daniel watching her with those perceptive eyes. "Just a small thing," he said modestly. Lily mentioned eating somewhere to keep her treasures. "My seashells and pretty rocks and the ribbon from my birthday present and the picture of Mama," Lily confirmed. "Can I go show Papa?" "Of course," Emma said. "I'm sure he'll be very impressed." As Lily ran toward the house, Emma found herself alone with Daniel for the first time since her arrival. She turned back to the laundry, pinning a pillowcase to the line with more force than necessary. "You're settling in well," Daniel observed, moving to help her with a heavy sheet that was threatening to blow off the line in the October breeze. Emma accepted his assistance reluctantly. "The work is familiar enough," she said. "That's not what I meant." Daniel secured his end of the sheet and stepped back. "Lily adores you already. Thomas says you've reorganized the entire household in a week. Mrs. Parker is singing your praises in town." Emma felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. "I've only done what needed doing, and done it well." Daniel picked up another sheet from the basket, shaking it out before passing one end to her. They worked together in silence for a moment, the simple domestic task creating an unexpected intimacy. "Why are you here so often, Mr. Reed?" Emma asked finally, the question that had been bothering her all week finally breaking free. Daniel looked surprised. "I told you, Thomas is my friend. I like to check on him and Lily." "Is that all?" Emma pressed, unsure why his answer mattered to her. Daniel studied her face for a moment. "What are you really asking, Miss Thorne?" Emma flushed, regretting her impulsive question. Nothing. Forget I spoke. No. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. You have a right to understand the relationships here, especially given your arrangement with Thomas. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. When Rebecca died 3 years ago, Thomas was lost. Grief-stricken, overwhelmed with a farm to run and a 4-year-old daughter to raise. Alone. I helped where I could, fixed things around the farm, took Lily fishing when Thomas couldn't bear to leave the house, made sure he ate sometimes. Emma could picture it, the quiet blacksmith stepping in without fanfare, providing practical support rather than empty words. We became family of a sort, Daniel continued. Not by blood, but by choice. So yes, I come often. I care about them. His honesty disarmed her. Emma had expected evasion or perhaps offense at her questioning, not this straightforward explanation. Thank you, she said quietly, for telling me. Daniel nodded, then surprised her by changing the subject. Thomas mentioned you might need to visit town for some personal items. I could take you this afternoon after I deliver Miller's wheel rim. Emma hesitated. She did need things, thread, writing paper, a few toiletries, but the prospect of being alone with Daniel for the journey to town and back was unsettling. Mrs. Parker would chaperone, of course, Daniel added, correctly reading her concern. She needs to visit the apothecary for Thomas's medicine anyway. Put that way, the offer was perfectly proper. Emma nodded her acceptance. Thank you, Mr. Reed, that would be helpful. The trip to Oakridge that afternoon was more enjoyable than Emma had anticipated. The October day was crisp but sunny, the trees at the peak of their autumn glory. Mrs. Parker kept up a steady stream of local gossip, filling Emma in on the town's characters and history in a way that required little response from her. Daniel drove the wagon with his usual quiet competence, occasionally adding details to Mrs. Parker's stories or pointing out landmarks Emma might find useful to know: the church, the school Lily attended, the doctor's house. Oakridge itself was larger than Emma had registered on her arrival day. The main street boasted a general store, a milliner's shop, a small hotel, the blacksmith's forge, and various other businesses. People moved about with purpose, nodding. Greetings to Daniel and Mrs. Parker as they passed. Everyone knows everyone here, Mrs. Parker explained as they pulled up in front of the general store. That explained the powerful arms, the calloused hands. Emma had always found smithies slightly intimidating. The heat, the noise, the sheer physical strength required. She shifted slightly, putting another inch between them. Thomas has been a good friend to me, Daniel said. When my parents died of the fever 5 years back, he helped me get established. Let me use his old forge until I could afford my own. He glanced at her. His daughter Lily is a sweet child, 7 years old, and bright as a new penny. She's been excited about your arrival, been cleaning her room and helping Mrs. Parker tidy the house all week. Emma felt a twinge of guilt at the mention of the child. Whatever her misgivings about this arrangement, about men in general, the little girl was innocent. She deserved kindness. The road wound through dense woods, the trees aflame with autumn colors, rich golds, fiery oranges, deep reds. In other circumstances, Emma might have found the scene beautiful, but today, she saw only isolation. The farther they traveled from town, the more vulnerable she felt. You don't talk much, do you? Daniel observed after another stretch of silence. Emma gave him a sharp look, prepared for the usual male response to her reticence, irritation. Demands for conversation, accusations of rudeness. Instead, she found Daniel watching her with simple curiosity, no judgment in his expression. That's all right, he said, turning his attention back to the road. Words aren't always necessary. My father was a man of few words himself. Used to say, still waters run deep. They traveled in silence after that, the only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels, the steady clop of the horse's hooves, and the rustle of wind through the trees. Despite herself, Emma began to relax slightly. Daniel Reed seemed content with quiet, making no demands on her. After about an hour, they crested a hill and the Blackwood farm came into view below them. It was larger than Emma had expected, a 2-story white farmhouse with a wide porch, a red barn, and several outbuildings. Fields stretched out on either side, some planted with what looked like winter wheat, others lying fallow. Smoke rose from the chimney, and chickens pecked in the yard. "There it is," Daniel said. "Not the biggest farm in the county, but good land. Thomas works hard." As they approached, the front door of the house opened, and a small figure darted out onto the porch. Even from a distance, Emma could see it was a child, a girl with dark braids flying behind her as she ran down the steps. "That'll be Lily," Daniel said, smiling. "I told you she was excited." The wagon pulled into the yard, and Daniel brought the horse to a stop. Before he could climb down, Lily was beside them, her face flushed with excitement. "Are you Miss Thorne? Are you going to be my new mother? I've been waiting all day. Mrs. Parker made apple pie for supper, and I helped pick the apples myself." The words tumbled out in a rush, and Emma felt overwhelmed by the child's enthusiasm. Lily had her father's dark hair but bright blue eyes that sparkled with life. She wore a simple blue dress with a white pinafore, and one of her braids was coming undone. Daniel laughed. "Give Miss Thorne a chance to catch your breath, Lily. She's had a long journey." "Sorry," Lily said, though she didn't look particularly repentant. "I'm just so happy you're here. Papa's sick, but he's going to be very glad to see you when he feels better." Emma managed a small smile for the child, the first she had offered since arriving in Oakridge. She climbed down from the wagon without assistance and smoothed her travel-wrinkled dress. "Come inside." Lily grabbed Emma's hand, tugging her toward the house. "I'll show you everything." Emma allowed herself to be led, glancing back once to see Daniel unloading her bag from the wagon. He caught her eye and offered a reassuring nod, as if to say, "You'll be all right." The inside of the farmhouse was clean and well-maintained, if somewhat sparse in its furnishings. The main room held a stone fireplace, a dining table with 6 chairs, and a few comfortable-looking armchairs. The floors were wooden, polished, with years of use, and braided rugs added touches of color. "Mrs. Parker," Lily called. "Miss Thorne is here." A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from what Emma assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Well, well," she said, smiling warmly. "Welcome to Oakridge, Miss Thorne. I'm Martha Parker. I've been helping out since Thomas's wife passed, looking after the house and this wild little thing." She ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. "Thank you for having this video in your feed today. If you're enjoying it so far, we'd appreciate it if you hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow. Now back to Emma's story." Emma nodded politely to Mrs. Parker, still not trusting herself to speak. The older woman seemed to understand, asking no questions about her silence. "You must be tired from your journey," Mrs. Parker said. "Lily, why don't you show Miss Thorne to her room so she can freshen up before supper?" "Yes, Mrs. Parker." Lily grabbed Emma's hand again. "Your room is upstairs. It used to be Mama's sewing room, but Papa and I fixed it up real nice for you." Emma followed the chattering child up the stairs, listening with half an ear as Lily pointed out various features of the house, the creaky third step they needed to fix, the window where birds sometimes built nests in spring, the mark on the wall where Lily had measured her height on her last birthday. "Here it is." Lily pushed open a door at the end of the hallway. The room was small but pleasant, with a narrow bed covered in a colorful quilt, a chest of drawers, a small writing desk by the window, and a rocking chair in the corner. Someone had placed a vase of late autumn flowers on the windowsill, and the curtains looked freshly laundered. "Do you like it?" Lily asked anxiously. Papa and I picked the quilt special. It was my grandmother's. Emma nodded, touching the quilt gently. The gesture, preparing the room, choosing a family heirloom for her, was unexpected. She had assumed Thomas Blackwood wanted a practical arrangement, a housekeeper and mother for his child rather than a true wife. The care taken with her room suggested something more. "I'll let you rest," Lily said, suddenly shy. "Supper's in an hour. You can meet Papa if he's feeling up to coming downstairs." When the door closed behind the child, Emma sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. The journey, the tension of meeting strangers, the uncertainty of her new situation, it all crashed down on her at once. She opened her carpet bag and removed the few possessions she had brought with her. From a hidden pocket, she took a small daguerreotype in a tarnished silver frame, the only image she had of her parents, both long dead. Her father's kind eyes and her mother's gentle smile looked back at her, and Emma felt a familiar ache of loss. What would they think of her? Now traveling across the country to marry a stranger because she had run out of options? Below the daguerreotype was another item, a folded newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Emma didn't open it. She knew the words by heart, had read them so many times they were branded into her memory. Prominent businessman Edward Hargrove. Fleas City, investors ruined. The man she had trusted, the man she had agreed to marry, had been nothing but a thief and a liar. He had stolen her family's modest savings, her trust, and her ability to believe in men's promises. Emma tucked both items back into her bag and moved to the window. From here, she could see the barn and the fields beyond. Daniel Reed was still in the yard, talking with Mrs. Parker. As she watched, he glanced up toward her window, and Emma stepped back quickly, not wanting to be caught observing him. The blacksmith puzzled her. He seemed different from other men she had known, quieter, more patient, less demanding. But Emma had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. Edward Hargrove had seemed kind and honorable too, until the day he disappeared with the money entrusted to him by dozens of Philadelphia families, including Emma's. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Thorne?" It was Mrs. Parker. "I've brought some hot water for washing up." Emma opened the door to find the older woman holding a steaming pitcher and basin. "Thank you," she said quietly. The first words she had spoken since arriving. Mrs. Parker's eyebrows rose slightly at the sound of her voice, but she made no comment. "Supper will be ready soon. Mr. Blackwood is feeling a bit better and hopes to join us briefly." After washing her face and hands and changing into her one good dress, a dark blue wool that had seen better days but was at least free of travel dust, Emma made her way downstairs. The smell of roasting chicken and fresh bread filled the house, making her realize how hungry she was. In the main room, Daniel Reed stood by the fireplace, talking quietly with a man Emma assumed must be Thomas Blackwood. The widower was tall and thin, with dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. Even from across the room, Emma could see he was ill. His face was pale, with a feverish sheen, and he seemed to be leaning on the mantelpiece for support. Lily spotted her first. "Miss Thorne, come meet my papa." All eyes turned to Emma, and she fought the urge to retreat back up the stairs. Instead, she forced herself to cross the room, keeping her spine straight and her expression composed. "Miss Thorne," Thomas Blackwood said, extending his hand. "I apologize for not meeting you at the station. This fever caught me by surprise." Emma briefly touched his hand, noting that it was indeed hot with fever. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice soft but clear, "you should be resting." "That's what I told him," Daniel said, shaking his head. "Stubborn as always. I couldn't miss meeting you," Thomas said. "Not after all our correspondence." He studied her face for a moment. "You look just as I imagined from your letters." Emma doubted that was true. In her letters, she had tried to present herself as confident and capable. The woman who stood before him now was thin from months of barely scraping by, weary from hard experience, and far from the cheerful companion he had likely envisioned. "Supper's ready," Mrs. Parker announced, saving Emma from having to respond. "Mr. Blackwood, you'll eat something small and then straight back to bed with you." Thomas didn't argue, which told Emma how truly ill he must be feeling. They moved to the dining table, where places had been set with simple but clean dishware. Emma found herself seated between Lily and Daniel, with Thomas at the head of the table and Mrs. Parker bustling between the kitchen and dining room with serving dishes. The meal was more elaborate than Emma had expected. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, green beans preserved from the summer garden, and the promised apple pie for dessert. It was more food than she had seen in one place in months, and she had to resist the urge to eat too quickly. Conversation flowed around her, mostly carried by Lily's enthusiastic chatter about school, her friends, and the cat that had recently had kittens in the barn. Thomas spoke little, clearly conserving his strength, but watched his daughter with obvious affection. Daniel contributed occasional comments or questions, drawing Lily out with genuine interest in her stories. Emma observed them all, trying to understand the dynamics. There was clearly affection between Daniel and the Blackwoods, not just friendship, but something like family. She wondered how often the blacksmith visited, what role he played in their lives. "Miss Thorne," Thomas said during a lull in conversation, "Daniel tells me you arrived safely but seem—" He hesitated, searching for the right word, reserved. Emma tensed, setting down her fork carefully. "I am not given to unnecessary speech, Mr. Blackwood. I respect that," Thomas said. "And I want you to know that there are no expectations beyond what we discussed in our letters. You'll have time to adjust, to get to know Lily and me. Nothing needs to be decided immediately." The kindness in his voice made Emma's throat tighten unexpectedly. She had come prepared for demands, for pressure, for disappointment when she failed to meet expectations. Thomas Blackwood's patience was disarming. "Thank you," she managed. "Papa needs a wife," Lily announced with a child's directness, "and I need a mother. But Mrs. Parker says these things can't be rushed." "Mrs. Parker is very wise," Daniel said, his lips twitching with suppressed amusement. After supper, Thomas excused himself, clearly exhausted by even this brief social interaction. Mrs. Parker shooed Lily upstairs for her bath, leaving Emma alone with Daniel in the main room. "I should head back to town," Daniel said, reaching for his cap. "Got an early start tomorrow. Miller's wagon needs a new wheel rim." Emma nodded, walking with him to the door more out of politeness than any desire to prolong their interaction. At the door, Daniel turned to her. "Miss Thorne," he said quietly, "I know this can't be easy, coming to a strange place, meeting new people. But Thomas is a good man, and Lily's a treasure. Whatever brought you here, whatever you're looking for, I hope you find it." His gray-green eyes held hers for a moment, and Emma felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. There was something in Daniel Reed's gaze, a steadiness, a warmth, that made her want to trust him despite herself. "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Reed," she said formally, taking a step back to re-establish distance. Daniel nodded, seeming to understand her need for space. "Good night, Miss Thorne. I expect we'll be seeing each other again soon." As his footsteps faded down the porch steps, Emma closed the door and leaned against it, feeling oddly breathless. Daniel Reed disturbed her composure in a way Thomas Blackwood did not, and that was dangerous. The blacksmith, with his quiet strength and perceptive eyes, could too easily slip past the defenses she had so carefully constructed. That night, in the narrow bed beneath the handmade quilt, Emma lay awake long after the house had gone silent. Through her window, she could see stars scattered across the New England sky, brighter than they ever appeared in Boston or Philadelphia. The air here was cleaner, the night deeper, the silence more complete. She thought of the day's events, of Lily's enthusiastic welcome, Thomas's quiet courtesy, Mrs. Parker's motherly efficiency. And Daniel Reed, with his storm-colored eyes and hands that could bend iron, but had treated her with such gentle respect. Emma turned on her side, pulling the quilt tighter around her shoulders. She had come to Oakridge out of desperation, not hope. She had agreed to marry Thomas Blackwood because she needed security, not because she believed in love or trust or happy endings. Those illusions had been shattered in Philadelphia 2 years ago. Yet something about this place, these people, made her wonder if perhaps she had been too quick to judge all men by Edward Hargrove's actions. Perhaps there were still good men in the world, men who kept their promises, who treated women with respect, who could be trusted with fragile things like hearts and futures. It was a dangerous thought, and Emma pushed it away firmly. One day in Oakridge wasn't enough to undo the hard lessons she had learned. Better to remain cautious, to keep her distance, to protect herself from further hurt. With that resolution firmly in mind, Emma finally drifted into sleep, unaware that her carefully constructed walls had already begun to crumble, brick by careful brick. The autumn days grew shorter as October faded into November, and Emma found herself settling into a rhythm at the Blackwood farm despite her initial reservations. Thomas recovered from his fever but remained weakened, relying on Emma more than either of them had anticipated. She took charge of the household accounts, organized the winter provisions, and helped Lily with her schoolwork each evening. Her practical nature thrived in this environment where her skills were valued and her quiet efficiency appreciated. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Now let's return to Emma's journey. On a crisp November morning, Emma stood in the kitchen kneading bread dough with methodical precision. Through the window, she could see frost silvering the fields and the barn roof. Winter was approaching, and with it came a sense of permanence to her situation. Soon travel would be difficult, roads impassable with snow. She would be committed to this place, these people, at least until spring. The thought was less frightening than it might have been a month ago. Thomas Blackwood had proven to be exactly what his letters had suggested: kind, fair, respectful of her boundaries. He never pressed for affection or demanded more than she could give. Their relationship remained proper and somewhat distant, more like business partners than a courting couple, which suited Emma perfectly. It was Daniel Reed who continued to unsettle her carefully maintained composure. The blacksmith visited regularly, sometimes bringing supplies from town, other times helping with repairs around the farm that Thomas was still too weak to manage. Each time, he treated Emma with the same quiet respect, never pushing past her defenses but somehow making her aware of them in a way that left her questioning their necessity. The sound of hoofbeats in the yard drew her attention back to the present. Emma wiped flour from her hands and moved to the window, expecting to see Daniel with his usual Saturday deliveries. Instead, she was surprised to see Thomas returning from an early morning ride to a neighbor's farm. He dismounted slowly, his movements still lacking their former vigor. "You shouldn't be riding alone yet," Emma said when he entered the kitchen, shaking snow from his coat. Dr. Wilson said another week of rest. Thomas smiled ruefully. "I've never been good at sitting idle. Besides, the Petersons' youngest has the croup. Martha knows some remedies that might help." Emma busied herself, preparing tea, trying not to show how his casual mention of Mrs. Parker by her first name bothered her. The older woman had become more than just a helper in recent weeks. She was clearly Thomas's friend and confidant, someone who shared a history with him that Emma could never be part of. "Something smells wonderful," Thomas said, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. "Just bread," Emma replied, setting the tea before him, "and apple butter from the last of the fall apples." "You've been a godsend these past weeks," Thomas said, his tone sincere. "I don't know how Lily and I would have managed without you." Emma felt a flush of pleasure at his praise, though she kept her expression neutral. "It's nothing more than we agreed upon in our letters." "It's far more," Thomas said quietly. "You've brought order and calm back to this house. Lily adores you, and He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've come to value your presence greatly." It was the closest he had come to expressing personal feelings for her, and Emma found herself unexpectedly flustered. "I should check on the bread," she said, turning back to the stove to hide her confusion. "Of course," Thomas said, sipping his tea. After a moment, he added, "The Harvest Festival is next weekend. The whole town gathers at the church for dinner, games, dancing. It's quite the event." Emma stiffened slightly. "I see. I'd like you to come with us, with Lily and me." Thomas clarified. "It would be a good opportunity for you to meet more people from town, to be introduced properly." As Thomas's intended wife, Emma realized he meant. The thought made her stomach knot with anxiety. Attending such an event would make their arrangement public, would invite scrutiny and questions she wasn't prepared to answer. "I don't have anything suitable to wear," she said, the first excuse that came to mind. "I thought of that," Thomas said. "Mrs. Peterson is quite skilled with a needle. She could alter one of Rebecca's dresses for you. There are several packed away in the attic." Emma's discomfort increased. To wear his dead wife's clothing, to present herself to the town as Rebecca's replacement. It felt wrong somehow, presumptuous. "I couldn't possibly." "Please," Thomas interrupted gently. "I know it's an unusual request, but Rebecca would have wanted her things to be used, not left to moths and dust. And Lily would be so pleased to have you there." It was the mention of Lily that weakened Emma's resolve. The child had shown nothing but warmth and affection from the beginning, accepting Emma into her life with an openness that humbled her. To disappoint Lily for the sake of her own discomfort seemed selfish. "Very well," Emma agreed reluctantly. "If Mrs. Peterson truly doesn't mind the work." Thomas's smile was warm with gratitude. "Thank you. It will mean a great deal to both of us." Later that afternoon, as Emma helped Lily practice her spelling words at the kitchen table, the sound of a wagon arriving drew their attention. This time it was Daniel, his broad shoulders dusted with the light snow that had begun falling an hour earlier. "Daniel!" Lily cried, abandoning her slate and running to the door. "Did you bring the nails for my birdhouse?" Daniel laughed, swinging the child up into his arms as he entered. "Hello to you too, Sprite. Yes, I brought your nails and some proper wood that won't split when you hammer it." He set Lily down and turned to Emma, touching his cap in greeting. "Miss Thorne, how are you today?" "Well enough, Mr. Reed," Emma replied, keeping her tone polite but distant. "Thomas is in his study if you're looking for him." Daniel nodded, but made no move toward the study. Instead, he produced a small package from his coat pocket. "Actually, I brought something for you as well." Emma looked at the package with surprise. It was wrapped in brown paper and tied with simple string. "For me?" "I noticed your thimble was cracked last time you were mending by the fire," Daniel explained. "Thought you might be able to use a new one." Hesitantly, Emma accepted the package and untied the string. Inside was a thimble unlike any she had seen before, iron rather than the usual silver or bone, but polished to a soft gleam and engraved with a delicate pattern of leaves. "You made this," she said softly, not a question but a realization. Daniel nodded, a hint of color touching his cheekbones above his beard. "It's sturdier than the usual kind. Won't crack or dent easily." Emma turned the thimble in her fingers, admiring the craftsmanship. The inside was perfectly smooth, the outside beautifully decorated yet practical. It represented everything she was coming to understand about Daniel Reed, strength and delicacy existing in perfect balance. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Thank you." Something in Daniel's expression changed, a warmth entering his gray-green eyes that made Emma look away quickly. "Just a small thing," he said, practical. But they both knew it was more than that. It was the first personal gift Emma had received in years, chosen with thought and crafted with care. It represented a kind of attention she had deliberately avoided since Edward Hargrove's betrayal. "I should find Thomas," Daniel said, seeming to sense her discomfort. "Need to discuss the broken fence in the north pasture." When he had gone, Lily looked up at Emma with curious eyes. "Daniel likes you," she said matter-of-factly. "He never made Mama a thimble." Emma felt heat rush to her cheeks. "Mr. Reed is just being kind, Lily. He's a good friend to your father." Lily shrugged, unconvinced. "He looks at you different than he looks at Papa or Mrs. Parker, like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve." Out of the mouths of babes, Emma thought, disturbed by the child's perceptiveness. Was she so transparent that even a 7-year-old could see the confusion Daniel created in her? Or was Lily simply observing Daniel's behavior with the unfiltered clarity of childhood? Either way, the situation was becoming more complicated than Emma had anticipated. She had come to Oakridge expecting a straightforward arrangement with Thomas Blackwood, security and stability in exchange for household management and care for his daughter. Daniel Reed had not factored into her careful plans. The day of the Harvest Festival arrived with clear skies and crisp air, perfect weather for the community celebration. Emma stood before the small mirror in her room, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at her. Mrs. Peterson had worked wonders with one of Rebecca's dresses, taking in the waist and letting out the bodice to fit Emma's different proportions. The result was a gown of deep burgundy wool, trimmed with black velvet at the collar and cuffs, far finer than anything Emma had owned since leaving Philadelphia. "You look like a princess," Lily said from the doorway, her eyes wide with admiration. The child was dressed in her Sunday best, her dark hair neatly braided and tied with ribbons. Emma smiled, smoothing the unfamiliar fabric. "Hardly that. But the dress is lovely. Mrs. Peterson is very skilled. Papa's waiting downstairs," Lily said, bouncing with excitement. "He says you look beautiful." Emma felt her cheeks warm. Thomas had seen her briefly when she tried on the altered dress for final adjustments, and his appreciative gaze had made her uncharacteristically self-conscious. It was one thing to be valued for her practical skills, quite another to be admired as a woman. Downstairs, Thomas waited by the door in his best suit, his silver-streaked hair neatly combed. He had regained much of his strength in recent weeks, though he still tired more quickly than before his illness. He smiled when he saw Emma, a genuine expression of admiration. "Miss Thorne," he said, "you do that dress more justice than Rebecca ever did." The compliment, though kindly meant, made Emma uncomfortable. She didn't want to be compared to his dead wife, favorably or otherwise. "Mrs. Peterson deserves all the credit," she said, deflecting the praise. The ride to town was filled with Lily's excited chatter about the festival games and treats she anticipated. Emma sat quietly beside Thomas in the wagon, mentally preparing herself for the social scrutiny ahead. As a newcomer and Thomas Blackwood's mail-order bride, she would be the object of considerable curiosity. The church grounds were transformed. When they arrived, decorated with autumn garlands and tables laden with food. Lanterns hung from tree branches, ready to be lit when evening fell. Nearly the entire population of Oakridge seemed to be present, gathered in clusters of family and friends. "Thomas, over here." Mrs. Parker waved from near the dessert table, where she stood with several other women. The question, asked with such gentle directness, broke something loose inside Emma. After weeks of holding herself apart, of careful distance and measured responses, the dam of her silence finally cracked. "I was engaged once," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "in Philadelphia. His name was Edward Hargrove, a businessman with connections to my late father's associates. He was charming, respectable, everything a young woman is taught to want in a husband." Thomas listened silently, his face showing no judgment, only attentive concern. "My parents died when I was 20, leaving me with a modest inheritance," Emma continued. "Not wealth, but enough to maintain a respectable life. Edward convinced me to invest it in his business ventures as a sign of my trust and commitment to our future together." She laughed bitterly. "And I did, every penny, along with the savings of dozens of other families who believed in him. 2 days before our wedding, he disappeared, along with all the money. It was a confident scheme from the beginning. He never cared for me. I was just another victim, perhaps more valuable because my status helped him gain others' trust." "Emma," Thomas said softly, compassion in his voice, "I'm so sorry." She shook her head, determined to finish now that she had begun. "The scandal was considerable. I was ruined financially, of course, but the social disgrace was worse. People whispered that I must have known, must have been complicit. Others pitied me as a fool. I couldn't bear it. I left Philadelphia with what little I could sell, went to Boston where no one knew me, and became a seamstress." "And you've been running ever since," Thomas observed. "Not just from the scandal, but from the possibility of being hurt again." Emma nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders at having finally spoken the truth. "I came here because it seemed safe, a practical arrangement with clear terms, no romantic illusions, no risk of caring too much." "And then you met Daniel," Thomas said. The simple statement hung in the air between them, its implications too significant to be dismissed. "He unsettles me," Emma admitted. "He sees too much, asks questions I don't want to answer, makes me feel things I've spent years trying not to feel." "That sounds exhausting," Thomas said gently. "All that effort spent on not feeling." His words struck Emma with unexpected force. It was exhausting, the constant vigilance, the emotional fortress she had built and maintained at such cost. What had it gained her except isolation and fear? "What are you suggesting, Thomas?" she asked. "That I simply forget the lessons I've learned, trust blindly again." "Not blindly, no," Thomas said, "but perhaps with open eyes. Daniel Reed is not Edward Hargrove. I've known him since he was a boy. He's honorable to his core, sometimes to a fault. He would cut off his right hand before he would deliberately hurt someone he cares about." Emma rose from her chair, too agitated to remain seated. "Even if what you say is true, even if I could bring myself to explore whatever this is between us, what about our arrangement? What about Lily? I gave you my word." "Arrangements can change," Thomas said. "As for Lily, she would still have you in her life, perhaps not as her stepmother, but as—" He hesitated. "As what?" Emma pressed. Thomas smiled slightly. "That would depend on where things lead with Daniel, wouldn't it?" The implication made Emma's heart race. She turned away, moving to the window to hide her confusion. Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. Somewhere in the village, Daniel Reed was perhaps looking at those same stars, thinking of her as she was thinking of him. "This is all happening too quickly," she said. "A few hours ago, I thought my future was settled." "Settled isn't the same as happy," Thomas pointed out. "I want you to be happy, Emma. I've come to care for you enough to want that more than I want the comfort of our arrangement." His generosity humbled her. Here was a good man offering her freedom from an obligation that no longer served either of them, asking nothing in return except her honesty. "What would you have me do?" she asked, turning back to face him. "First, stay," Thomas said firmly. "Regardless of what happens with Daniel, your place here is secure for as long as you wish it. Lily needs you, and frankly, so do I, if not as a wife, then as a friend and housekeeper." Relief flooded through Emma, the fear of being cast out, of having to start over yet again in a new place, had been a shadow at the back of her mind. "And second?" she asked. "Be honest with yourself most of all," Thomas said. Allow yourself to consider possibilities beyond the safe, controlled existence you've planned. You've survived betrayal, Emma. That shows remarkable strength. But survival alone is a meager ambition for a life as promising as yours. His words resonated with something long buried inside her. A younger Emma who had once dreamed of more than mere safety, who had believed in possibility and hope before experience taught her caution. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "You don't have to know tonight," Thomas assured her. "Just promise you'll think about it. And perhaps when Daniel comes for dinner tomorrow, you might look at him with new eyes, not through the lens of your past, but with the possibility of your future." Emma nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the conversation and the sudden expansion of her world. Where hours before her path had seemed fixed and narrow, now possibilities stretched before her like roads branching into unknown territory. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for the gift he was offering. Thomas rose and moved toward the door. "It's late, and we're both tired. Things will seem clearer in the morning." "Thomas," Emma called as he reached the doorway. "What about you? Don't you deserve happiness too?" He paused, a small smile touching his lips. "Who says I'm unhappy? I have Lily, my farm, good friends. And perhaps someday, when the time is right, I'll find someone who looks at me the way Daniel looks at you, and the way you look at him when you think no one notices." With that, he left her alone with her thoughts, which spun like autumn leaves in a whirlwind long into the night. Morning brought no miraculous clarity, but Emma faced the day with a strange mixture of anxiety and anticipation. She went about her usual tasks, preparing breakfast, helping Lily with her Sunday reading, planning the week's meals, while her mind continually circled back to the evening ahead. Daniel would come for dinner. She would see him for the first time since their conversation in the church garden, since Thomas's unexpected decision to release her from their arrangement. "You're distracted today," Lily observed as Emma absent-mindedly poured milk into an already full glass. "Are you thinking about the festival? Wasn't it wonderful? I love dancing with Daniel. He's so tall, I can stand on his boots and still not reach his shoulders." Emma smiled despite her inner turmoil. "Yes, it was a lovely evening." "Mrs. Simmons said you looked very fine in Mama's dress," Lily continued. "She said it was a shame the dress couldn't be buried with Mama, but I think Mama would like that you're wearing it. She didn't like things going to waste." The child's innocent comment touched Emma. "Your mother sounds like she was a very practical woman." "She was," Lily agreed. "Papa says I'm like her that way. But I'm forgetful sometimes, and Mama never forgot anything. She always remembered birthdays and special days and when to plant the garden." Listening to Lily talk about Rebecca with such natural affection made Emma realize how little she actually knew about the woman whose place she had been meant to take. In all the weeks she had been at the farm, she had avoided asking about Rebecca, as if acknowledging the first Mrs. Blackwood would somehow diminish her own position. "Tell me more about your mother," Emma said impulsively. "What else do you remember about her?" Lily's face lit up at the invitation. For the next hour, as they sat by the fire in the parlor, the child shared her memories, her mother's favorite songs, the stories she used to tell, the way she would leave little surprises under Lily's pillow on special days. "She got sick so slowly that at first we didn't really notice," Lily said, her voice growing quieter. "She just got tired a lot, and then she started coughing, and then one day she couldn't get out of bed anymore. Daniel came every day, even when she was too sick to know he was there. He would just sit with her and hold her hand, and sometimes I would hear him telling her about things happening in town, like she could still hear him." Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the image. Daniel keeping vigil at a dying woman's bedside, offering comfort through simple presence and shared stories. It was another glimpse of the man behind the quiet blacksmith, the depth of loyalty and compassion that lay beneath his reserved exterior. Daniel was sad for a long time after Mama died, Lily continued. Papa said it was because they grew up together, like brother and sister, so it's like Daniel lost his sister too. But he still came to see us all the time, and he taught me how to fish and how to tell which berries are safe to eat in the woods. The conversation shifted to happier memories, but Emma's mind lingered on this new information. Daniel and Rebecca had been close, had grown up together. No wonder he was so devoted to Thomas and Lily. They were his family in all but blood. By the time Thomas returned from his visit to a neighboring farm, Emma had gained a clearer picture, not just of Rebecca, but of the tightly woven relationships that connected Daniel to the Blackwood family. It made her both more cautious about disrupting those bonds and more curious about where she might fit within them. "Emma," Thomas said, finding her in the kitchen preparing for dinner, "I've been thinking about our conversation last night." She looked up from the vegetable she was chopping, tension returning to her shoulders. "Have you changed your mind?" "No," he assured her quickly. "But I realized I may have put you in an awkward position. Daniel doesn't know that I've, stepped aside, for lack of a better term. He still believes you and I are proceeding with our arrangement." Emma hadn't considered this complication. "What are you suggesting?" "That I speak with him privately before dinner," Thomas said. "He deserves to know where things stand between us. After that, whatever happens or doesn't happen between you and Daniel will be for the two of you to determine." Relief mingled with renewed anxiety at his proposal. Part of Emma wanted to delay any confrontation with her feelings, for Daniel to maintain the status quo a little longer while she sorted through her confusion. But she also recognized that honesty was the only fair course for all of them. "Yes," she agreed, "that would be best. But Thomas, please make it clear that nothing is certain. I'm not ready to make any declarations or promises." Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. This is just opening a door, Emma. Whether you walk through it, and when, is entirely your choice." As the afternoon waned and the time of Daniel's arrival grew closer, Emma found herself growing increasingly restless. She changed her dress twice, finally settling on a simple blue gown that brought out the amber in her eyes. She arranged her hair with more care than usual, pinning it in a softer style that framed her face. "You look pretty," Lily observed, perched on Emma's bed, watching the preparations. "Is it because Daniel's coming for dinner?" Emma nearly dropped her hairbrush at the directness of the question. "I always try to look presentable for guests," she said evasively. Lily smiled knowingly, a disconcertingly adult expression on her young face. "Daniel thinks you're pretty too. I heard him tell Papa so at the festival." One featured birds in flight, another stars and moon phases, and the third a simple pattern of intertwining leaves. "They're beautiful," Emma said, genuinely moved by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "But why 3? Daniel's expression was a mixture of shyness and determination. "The first one I gave you was practical, strong, useful, but perhaps a bit plain. These are still practical, but with a bit of beauty added. I thought, I hoped they might represent possibility, different possibilities." The symbolism wasn't lost on Emma. Like the thimbles, her life could be both practical and beautiful, useful and meaningful. She could be protected without being closed off, strong without being hard. "Thank you," she said, looking up to meet his gaze, "not just for these, but for not giving up. For seeing something in me worth waiting for." Daniel's eyes softened. "There's so much in you worth waiting for, Emma Thorne. I just hope someday you'll see it too." The door opened behind them, breaking the moment. "Is it time for apple tart yet?" Lily asked, peering out at them. "Papa says we should. Ask if you're ready." Emma smiled at the child's transparent excuse to check on them. "Yes, I think we're ready for dessert now. Mr. Reed was just showing me the beautiful thimbles he made. Oh, let me see," Lily exclaimed, bouncing onto the porch. "Daniel makes the prettiest things. He's making me a rocking horse for Christmas." But I'm not supposed to know about it. Daniel laughed, ruffling the girl's hair affectionately. And how exactly do you know about a Christmas surprise that's still hidden in my workshop? Lily grinned unrepentantly. Billy Peterson saw it when he delivered nails for his father, and he told me at school. But I'll pretend to be surprised, I promise. As they followed Lily back inside for dessert, Daniel's hand brushed against Emma's. A fleeting touch that might have been accidental, but felt deliberate. She didn't pull away, allowing the small contact as a first tentative step toward the possibility they had discussed. The evening continued with dessert and conversation by the fire, the atmosphere warm with a sense of new beginnings rather than endings. When it came time for Daniel to leave, Emma walked into the door while Thomas helped Lily prepare for bed. "Will you come to the Thanksgiving gathering at the church next week?" Daniel asked as he put on his coat. "The whole town contributes. Dishes, and afterward there's music, though not as much dancing as at the Harvest Festival." Emma hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes, I'd like that. Perhaps we could walk there together?" The invitation was a small thing, but it represented a significant shift in her willingness to move beyond the safety of her isolation. Daniel's smile was worth the momentary anxiety the suggestion had caused her. "I'd be honored," he said. "I'll come by around noon, if that suits." "It does," Emma agreed, returning his smile with a small one of her own. They stood for a moment in the doorway, neither quite ready to end the evening that had changed so much between them. Finally, Daniel reached for her hand, raising it briefly to his lips in a gesture both old-fashioned and unexpectedly affecting. "Good night, Emma," he said, his voice low and warm. "Thank you for giving possibility a chance." As she watched him walk to his wagon, then drive away into the darkness, Emma felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, not the painful flutter of anxiety that had become her constant companion, but something lighter, brighter. It took her a moment to recognize it for what it was: hope. It was tentative, fragile as a spring seedling pushing through winter-hardened earth, but undeniably present. For the first time in years, Emma was looking toward the future not with dread or resignation, but with a cautious anticipation. She closed the door against the night air, pressing her hand briefly to her heart, as if to protect this new delicate feeling. The path ahead was uncertain, would surely include setbacks and moments of doubt, but it was a path she was finally willing to explore, one day at a time, one small trust at a time, one possibility at a time. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was something better. A beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.